Today I am going to show you a way in which you can get millions of orns in a single day of farming. Well, the farming will be one day, but the preparation could take you from 5 or even up to 15 days. So this is not a process that everyone would be interested in, but in my opinion is worth it, even if it means losing these days without being able to level up. First, we are going to talk about the things you will need to be able to carry out this process, and then I'll explain the process itself. Number 1. It is necessary to be between levels 100 and 149. With any other level it doesn't work. So if you are less than 100, the first thing is to level up to 100. But if you are already level 150 or higher, your only alternative is to create a new account and raise it to level 100. Number 2. You need 2 Ring of Restraint. You can find these rings in stores, but if you could find at least 1 broken quality, that would help you a lot. Preferably, the moment you reach level 100 you have to equip these 2 rings to avoid further leveling up. Remember, if you level up by accident you will no longer be able to do this. Number 3. After getting and equipping the 2 rings, you are going to look for these armors. I recommend 2 different sets. One is for the class you want to be later, and the other set will preferably have the same amount of armor and resistance. And of course we are only interested in the best quality. 190% and above is ideal. Even though these 3 armors are not the best, they are the easiest to find. You can use the app or visit the Orna Guides website to know if at that moment you can access the other best options. Our main goal is to improve these armors up to level 10 or 12 and thus reach 1000 armor and resistance. Although it is possible to farm a lot of orns even with less armor than that, I recommend that if you are relatively new to the game, try to reach these numbers. It will be the same for weapons. 1 for the class you want to be in the future, and another 2 that will be for farming. In this case I recommend you either 2 of this, or just 1, and the other can be any other physical damage weapon, but without a element. Once again we look for good quality weapons. We are going to enchant the bow with the element of our faction. This so that it has about 25% more damage. And the weapon that has no element we are going to use against these 2 enemies. Just to clarify, yes, you can do this using only 1 weapon, but having the 2, one with your faction element, and the other without element will help you a lot. Number 4. Another object that we are going to need is a gadget. This is to prevent the defense 2 down that the Griffin applies to us. If you can get this one it would be even better, but with the normal gadget should suffice. Number 5. For the offhand, we will need 2 objects. The first is this scroll, and you get it by defeating this boss. It is not essential that you level it up or even be of good quality. A normal level 1 is enough, and for the second object we're going to need one of these. It is important that it is 5 stars and not 3. We need this item because it lets us use this ability that hits just like this other one, with the big difference that it costs no mana and generates 2 ward turns. It is also very important that it is of the worst possible quality. This to avoid losing too much ward. In addition to that, we want to raise it to level 10 minimum. And to finish, we're also going to need this follower. It is very easy to find and it is the only one you will need. Now for the process. While we are still at levels 100 to 149, when we enter the endless dungeon, enemies will not get stronger no matter how many floors you go up. But the rewards will keep getting better. Just by reaching the 2000th floor, we will get about 70 million orns. And thanks to our weapons and armor we can advance to these floors without much trouble. This is where the Ring of Restraint plays an important role, since it will help us not to level up and continue obtaining orns. It is important to mention that it is much easier to do this between levels 100 to 124. That's why we need to equip those rings the moment we hit level 100. And thus avoid going up to level 125. But let's go in order. The first thing is to choose the difficulty. If you still do not have your armor ready or you are still looking for good quality armor, I recommend doing the normal endless dungeon. This will allow you to use potions in case you are in trouble. But if you are already noticing that you can reach floors 200 or more without having to use potions other than mana, then select this difficulty as well. On this difficulty you get double the rewards. But you can no longer use potions. That's why we need this scroll. With it we can recover mana. And when we entered the dungeon, the first thing we are going to look for is an enemy that does not represent a threat. So we can place all the buffs without being in danger. Any enemy that can reduce our defenses, reduce our attack or apply spells that can immobilize us, is a bad enemy. You can check their skills from here. If the enemy doesn't have these skills, then it's a good option. Otherwise we defeat him and look for another. When we finally find the right enemy, let's get out of the dungeon and change our settings. We will need 4. The first one has all the normal buffs. This is the list of them. Also here we have the scroll to recover mana. This is only if we're in this difficulty. If it's normal, just use potions. We also have the gadget and some other accessory that helps us not to receive debuffs. In fact, depending on your accessories, the buffs you are going to use change. For example, if you don't have an accessory that prevents you from receiving the attack 1 down, instead of using this spell you're going to use these 2. And if you don't have this accessory, then instead of using this spell, you will have to use this and pray that you do not get a resistance 2 down. After placing these buffs on you, now let's switch to the other configuration. Here we have these spells. You only get these with this specialization at level 120. If you don't have that level, just skip this part. And after we get all 6 of them, we switch to this other specialization. In order to access the spell of Berserk, we're only going to change specializations when we can reach floors 200 using a single specialization. Because with this we can go from reaching the 200th floor to reach the 500th floor without problems. And on those floors, defeating a boss can give you more than 50,000 orns. From the 1000th floor up, everything is very similar. Almost all enemies are berserk. But the vast majority, or you defeat them in one hit, or they do 0 damage to you. So we are going to talk only about those that can give you problems, and how to defeat them easily. For example, this enemy, although we can defeat it with a single blow, there is still the possibility of us missing the blow. We cannot control that, but what we can do is to equip ourselves with more armor when we face it. Or the easiest way, have this item in the worst possible quality and at level 10. This allows us to have more than 2000 total life, and be able to withstand one hit from him. Another way he will defeat us is when we have one of these debuffs. So if an enemy applies it to you, you will have to wait for it to go away. Heal yourself with this spell. Or wait for your follower to heal you before you can move on. This other enemy, it is similar to the previous one. It hits very hard if you don't have this protection. Also apply this spell. At level 125 we can take it off using this specialization. But at lower levels it can be annoying to have. This enemy also applies it. But with a 500 damage weapon and our faction item we can beat him even in Berserk. It is only when they apply attack 1 down to us that sometimes we will not be able to defeat it, and it will be necessary to put him to sleep first. For these 2 enemies it is better to change our weapon to the one that has no element. We can defeat the first one with 1 blow, but the second we will have to sleep first. They are a problem because they reduce our attack and defenses. Then we have the Griffin, which can apply defense 2 down. But we cannot put him to sleep or kill him with 1 blow. So with him, We need to use the third configuration. This one has the gadget to avoid defense 2 down. When we are 1 hit away from defeating the Griffin, we switch to the fourth configuration. The third and fourth configuration have the same spells, but only the accessories change. The fourth will have the 2, Ring of Restraint. This last configuration is the one that we will use whenever we defeat an enemy. Be very careful on floors 2000 or more, because defeat a single boss without having these rings equipped can take you to level 150 or higher. And now for the last part. When you get 200 million orns or more, it's time to level up and make up for lost time. We are going to prepare 3 dungeons, all with these 2 difficulties. And you have 2 options. You can have all 3 dungeons between floors 2000 to 6000. Or climb a single dungeon to floor 10,000 or up to 20,000. And use the other 2 as extra attempts to reach the 20,000 floor. It takes me an average of 50 minutes to climb 1,000 floors. In theory, you should already have gotten enough practice to achieve similar times. Don't try to get more dungeons. The moment you reach level 150, the next enemy will defeat you in 1 hit. You have about 30 seconds before the enemies in the other dungeons get very strong. I also remind you that not all enemies are the same. To get as much experience as possible, you need to choose the right enemy. That enemy is this. And of course in Berserk. Before deciding to level up, first you need him to be your enemy in the dungeons you are going to use. Since that is ready, you are going to change the accessories to the ones that increase your experience. You are also going to use this potion and search for this shrine. If you want, also look for this other one. Ideally, you should already have these located, or be ready to buy them with money, if you want to help the developers. In addition to this, you can get this extra buff from your kingdom. Later I will make a video on how to improve the kingdom system, since I think it is very bad, even from those in the top 50. But one way to convince your kingdom to let you use that buff is to earn it. For example, you can do the missions that are here. Take a screenshot before completing it to prove you did it. Talk to the kingdom leader and ask if they let you activate that buff if you get them the 5,000 points that the buff activation requires. Another way is that you create your own kingdom and activate it from there. And just to do a quick calculation, on the 2000th floor, with all these experience buffs, you can get this amount of experience. By the way, I was forgetting some important information. When you're ready to level up, in the last dungeon you are preparing, do not use the Ring of Restraint. Try to reach level 149. There you put the rings again and look for the boss that I showed you. And now you do the rest of the preparations. So if you get this amount of experience and we multiply it by 3, we get this. If we go to the experience table and from level 149 we increase this amount, we realize that we can reach level 175. And if you could get to the 20,000th floor, you would reach level 199, just a few points below level 200. And of course, with enough orns to buy all the classes, pets and upgrades to your buildings. But even if you only reach level 150, for example, let's just say you were very, very unlucky, or you didn't prepare enough, you still have the benefit of never having to worry about farming orns again. At least as far as buying classes, pets and upgrade your buildings. And finally, remember that every month, there is a different event, with different enemies. So try to check their drops to see if you can get better weapons or armor, as well as followers among other things, and thus make this process much easier. That's all from me. I hope the information was helpful, and see you in the next video.